to another week on the podcast, guys. I'm so excited to have this guest. I feel like the universe really wanted me to speak to this person because I was having a conversation with Mans, as I always am, about, just things that should have been taught at school, which is something that I'm very, very, very passionate about. And then I saw a post by Ruby, who is a holistic sex coach, and it was all about 10 things that should have been taught in sex ed at school. And I was like, oh my gosh, ended up down the rabbit hole. And here we are. So Ruby, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
Oh, so excited. And I feel like I started writing questions down. I asked my listeners as well for questions, and there is so many. And I'm so excited to be having this conversation and open up, I guess, a conversation. It's so interesting. I do a course called Money Mindset. And I was saying to the ladies in there, it's so interesting that we're taught not to talk about sex, money, and politics. And they're all such important things. And so I'm so happy to be having a conversation with you and to be seeing you do the work that you're doing to open conversations and normalize sexuality, sensuality, and all of that amazing stuff. So I'd love to know before we get into all of it, what sort of it's not really like the most common job, I guess, common job description. So I'd love to know your background. Like, how did you get into this? What was your journey?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So for me, this journey started when I was quite young. I was about 19, I believe, and I was living on a really remote island off Australia. And I met a woman I've always been really interested in sex and sexuality. I've always been the friend that other friends come to hold space, to keep secrets, to talk to about sexuality. And I met a woman, we became really good friends, and she was right into Tantra and holistic, like a holistic approach to sex, and conscious sexuality. And it was just like it opened up this whole world, like having these conversations with her. And she's about 10 years older than me. And so I was just picking her brain about it. I was like, this is incredible. She put me onto some podcasts. And after a couple of years of reading lots of books and listening to all the podcasts all about conscious sexuality, I realized that I could do it as a career. So for me, that's kind of where it all started. But I've also always just loved sex. I've loved pushing the boundaries, exploring the boundaries of it. And for me, it's a way to express myself, explore all different parts of me and all different facets of myself. So for me to pursue it as a career has just been like total joy, because it's something I'm so passionate about and love so much. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And to hear a woman say, I've always loved sex, and so I wanted to explore it. And, I wonder, was there any blocks because it is such a topic that people have so much shame around, I find, shame around their body, shame around their desire, shame around pleasure, shame, just awkwardness, ickiness, embarrassment. Did you have any of those things come up, or was it something in your childhood? Was it quite open? Did you have your own experience of having to liberate yourself?
Absolutely. I was really lucky in the sense that both my parents are total hippies, and my household was just, sex was always spoken about very openly. My mum in particular has always been incredibly supportive of my sexuality, and I was sexually active from quite a young age, and she was aware of that, and there was never any shame in that sense. But and so she was always super supportive and wanted and created a really safe space for me to explore that. And my parents were always very comfortable with nakedness. They were always like, we've all got beautiful bodies, be naked. Like, it was never a sort of taboo in my household. But like everyone throughout high school, throughout, early adulthood, and even now, I absolutely experience blockages and things coming up. It's totally normal, and everyone experiences that to some degree, I believe. But for me, I think, really liberating myself from what I was told sex should look like has been a really beautiful journey for me. And yeah, I think surrounding myself with people who are open-minded, and I've just been constantly exploring and seeking information that pushes the norm of what sex should look like and how a woman should behave sexually, and what pleasure means and the expanse of pleasure, etc., etc. So for me, there's absolutely been blockages, but it's been a really beautiful journey, kind of like working through those. Yeah, for
Mm,
sure.
wow.
Yeah.
And what do you see as the really common blocks for anyone that you work with or for people that reach out to you? What do you
Mm.
sort of notice or observe as really common themes or threads in this space?
Yeah, I think there's so many, and everyone is quite different. But I think the one of the most common things that the majority of women that I speak to is total disconnect from body and pleasure, and not having that like body connection, not being connected and aware that, oh, this is my body. I am completely in control of this body and of this pleasure, and I can explore that. And I think another big block is society views sex through through a masculine lens, I suppose, like
Mm,
that pleasure is for men. So another big block for women that I speak to is that there's like this disconnect of like, oh, I can experience pleasure too. Oh, sex should be pleasurable for me as well, or can be pleasurable for me as well. So it's kind of like unpacking that, oh, sex isn't just for men. And that's speaking to like, for heterosexual women. And I will
mm,
most likely use like binary language here because we're sort of
mm,
speaking about men and women in that sense. But
mm,
yeah, so it's that's a massive theme that I notice. Um, and then I think the other thing is, to some degree, most of the women that reach out to me have experienced some sort of trauma
mm,
that has created some sort of like either mental block or physical block. And often that is to do with some degree of they haven't felt safe in some situation, or something has occurred and that trauma has stored itself in their body and created blockages to opening to feeling safe in other sexual experiences. Yeah.
mm. Wow, it's so heavy and there's so much to unpack. I'm sure no two blocks are the same. But I
Exactly.
guess, and I know like thinking of the listeners of this podcast and so many of my clients, like very high achieving, sort of very like type A personalities, very, I would say like often in the masculine, like in that like go,
Mm,
go, go, get shit done, like got lots going
yeah.
on, maybe juggling a business, maybe juggling family, kids, social life, like everything's go, 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 go. And so sometimes, like, you spoke about a block being a connection to ourselves and to our body, and
Mm,
and sort of switching into that feminine sensuality.
mm,
What would you say is like, if there's anyone that's listening that's like, oh my God, yeah, I haven't even stopped to like take a breath today.
yeah.
What's the starting point to learning to connect back to our senses and bring that into like a daily practice so that we can flip into our feminine energy and also, I guess, open our bodies and our minds up to feeling and receiving pleasure?